So today kicks off a new series of webinars for Kantata called the Essentials webinars. And in these, we're going to be talking to industry experts from a professional services organization, and they're going to tell us about their journey around a specific problem. And it's really a knowledge sharing exercise. For each of these upcoming webinars, the industry expert will be interviewed by one of our product marketers or product managers, sorry. And we're going to do this for the next 3-4 months as a way of sharing best practice and helping folk do their jobs. Our product managers on the call will also give their lens on the issues under the microscope, and time allowing, we'll get a demo in at the end. Okay, so that's just a little insight into what you can expect today and over the next few months. So with that, over to introductions. So my name is Prue Butterworth, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at Kantata. I cover EMEA and the SX product. Also on the panel this afternoon is my colleague, Mark, and he's a product manager. He will be conducting most of the interview. As I said, time allowing, there'll be a bit of a demo at the end, and he will put his lens on some of the issues raised by the customer. He's not only our Kantata SX PM, but he also is PM for the embedded analytics offering powered by Tableau, which our industry expert will be talking to us about today. And that brings me over to Dave Wood from Transform. I'll actually leave you to do most of your own introduction, Dave, as a way of kicking off the webinar. So for the next 25 minutes, you gentlemen have the floor. Dave, if you could start us off with a little bit about Transform, the customers you serve and the problems you solve.
Thank you, Prue. Transform, we're a technology and data consultancy company. We're based in the UK. We've been going for around about 25 years. We've got about 200 people working for us now. And we work across predominantly public and private sector businesses in the UK. So if I give you some examples, we're building the new learner data platform for Department for Education. So all the pupil attainment data that comes in from schools is going to be kind of hosted in that platform. And then we will kind of build a load of ML ops, reporting, analytics, dashboarding, etc. for them on top of that. We built the GamStop, which is basically the UK's gambling self-exclusion service. So you register once and you get stopped from gambling across all of the different operators. So which is quite an interesting service. It's now protecting 350,000 problem gamblers. And then, recently we're doing some work for HMRC in their trade area, and we're building a number of services in that area. But one of the recent things we're doing is actually building a AI-powered categorization engine. So it takes information about products that people are shipping, categorizes that using a combination of deep learning, AI, so using large language models and those sorts of things. So kind of a lot of interesting, novel technical solutions we build.
So yeah, Dave, I'd love to get into more detail about all of your really, really interesting leading edge projects, but I guess we're here to talk about forecasting mostly. And what you've described is a lot of governmental work, and I can see you've got other big organizations, big companies that you work for there. So a first impression of this might be that actually your forecasting seems quite easy. You've got a lot of big, stable customers who probably plan years in advance. So just give me a bit more background really on the sort of forecasting challenges that you face.
Yeah, so it is sort of, predominantly larger clients we work with. But actually, if you kind of look at the government contracts, the multi-million-pound contracts, but kind of within those, there's multiple projects that we run within those large contracts, and that's always changing. It's driven by policy decisions and various other things. So, if you look at that learner data service for DfE, think we've probably got about 30 active jobs that sort of run within that contract. Then generally within kind of the public sector, it's a very vibrant bidding environment. So we're getting loads of tenders through. And also, there's no kind of way of sort of channeling that demand. So we may have 5 or 6 public sector tenders running concurrently, and therefore we're trying to balance resources across committed work and then also across a number of government bids that might require the same resource types against each of the projects. And also we need to kind of manage and allocate our staff against those projects. So it's quite a complicated environment. Lots of trying to deal with lots of kind of delays in procurement as well. So you think you've got lots of people allocated against the project, and then the client very kindly tells you that they're going to delay the procurement by 2 or 3 weeks. So kind of a very fluid environment around forecasting.
And I guess like a lot of our other customers as well, you've been growing pretty fast. So that's something else you've got to try and take into account, isn't it, when you're putting your forecasts together?
Yeah, I mean, I think 6 years ago we were 40 people. We're now 200 people. I think when we were 40 people, we could probably get our arms around the resourcing and forecasting in the business. We kind of had a really clear view of what was going on. Now we're 200 people and growing. We need to kind of mature how we view things like forecasts. We need to be more diligent around the resources that we allocate. And also, the more people we have, the more important it is to kind of get them onto client work. So there's a lot of balancing, getting our permanent staff onto contracts. And we use some contractors to support our delivery.
Yeah.
And obviously, those people are at a higher cost. We need to do something around managing that cost and making sure that we look at the demand forward and understand how to hire the correct people to meet that demand.
Okay, so you've been growing fast. You've got volatile, changeable government projects and contracts. What was it with your previous solution before you came to Kantata that was kind of holding you back?
Yeah, I mean, we were using a Dynamics ERP system. It was a very good ERP system in terms of, it's a solid accounts payable platform. It did record time, but it was always retrospective. We didn't really have any sort of forward planning in the ERP system. And so we were kind of heavily, like I said, the word, dependent on people and spreadsheets. So we would have a weekly meeting where we got all the 10 most senior people in the business sitting down, looking at a spreadsheet, arguing about who was getting what resource, why somebody had taken their resource. It was all quite kind of chaotic. And also, we're a very data-focused business for our customers. I think I've used the expression cobbler's children quite a few times, but basically, we haven't really done anything in terms of building our own dashboards and really analyzing the data that's in our business to be better. So those were kind of some of the factors. We really need something that was focused on delivering for a kind of, consulting organization, so professional services, and not just some generic finance functions that allow us to send invoices, pay suppliers. So it was quite practical.
So I mean, this is obviously a common theme we see with customers who are considering a PSA, a professional services solution, and obviously with our customers as well. So we've got this nice picture that we talk a lot about, which we call the kind of the peaks and troughs or the forecast roller coaster slide. And I think this sort of quite nicely sort of summarizes the problems that you can have where you might start off when you're looking at what you're going to your forecast for the period, thinking that everything looks rosy. You've got lots of potential work on, but what you don't realize is actually that a lot of those resources have been double booked because with no visibility across as you say, across projects, across lines of business, then you can potentially end up with those people actually then being allocated, and you get a dip as you figure out that actually these people can't be in 2 places at once. You might end up with what we call the nice surprise. So a project comes out of nowhere. It wasn't on anybody's spreadsheets who was actually looking at forecasting. It just appears, and you've got to sort of scramble and find the resources to kind of get going on that project as well. And we see this, these peaks and troughs, this roller coaster, happening all the time. It's really sort of just because of this disparate disconnect between the data, the systems, and the people and the processes, which hopefully a solution like Kantata can solve. So does this kind of look familiar to you, the situation that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, we called it the resource roller coaster. So, I described that meeting that we had every Tuesday. We'd all get into that room, sit down, and it was always a combination of probably all those things. There were degrees of inflated forecasting, some nice surprises, quite a lot of delivery shift, and so it was really quite difficult to manage the business. So, one of the things that's been really kind of positive from Kantata is the ability to kind of really see in real time what's happening to our teams. So we've kind of moved away from 11-a-side football, people running around trying to solve the resourcing problem. Now we've got our head of ops who kind of basically does it in kind of real time, just looking at when things change, what the impact is, contacting the relevant people and dealing with it in a kind of controlled fashion rather than everybody running around pulling their hair out or dipping their brows with kind of worry about what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely it's not a team sport, is it, really, when it comes to that? So what made you come to Kantata then when you were looking to move to a dedicated sort of PS solution?
Yeah, I mean, forecasting was a massive part of it. We had a lot of the basic ERP functionality. We knew how to do all of those sort of things, but the actual ability to kind of do that granular level resource utilization and actually to then have that kind of do things, simple things like populate timesheets where people were actually being told how many hours to fill in. We had some really weird situations where if people went to the toilet, they would deduct that amount of time from the time that they bill the clients, where the clients would probably happily pay for their time. So it's really simple things like that, but also, the ability to really get into those forecasts, being able to drill into assignments to understand what's happening with people, understanding where they're over allocated. That was probably one of the most important parts of it. The analytical capabilities, we went in looking for something that had really rich reporting, beyond the standard reports, but something that could give us really insightful dashboards that we could drill into and that actually we could basically adapt and change for our own purposes.
Yeah.
That was kind of what's driving us towards more of a sort of professional services type solution. And then, we're a Salesforce partner. We do lots of stuff around Salesforce. So something that was in that Salesforce ecosystem made absolute sense, and kind of Kantata kind of ticked all those boxes for us, especially the really highly important ones like the integrated forecasting.
Mm-hmm. So you went live, I think it was May, wasn't it? So you're almost coming up to your first anniversary. And I think analytics followed a little bit later, sort of August time. So sort of 7 or 8 months now with analytics. So yeah, can you just sort of give us an idea of the benefits that you've seen today?
Yeah, so I've spoken about the time that it took to do the forecasting. We probably reduce the effort that's involved in that fivefold. So moving away from having lots of people working on it every day, we've got one person that's just focusing it all the time.
Yeah,
it's driven some of our profitability. I think we've seen about a 4 to 5% increase in our profitability since we've been using Kantata, and that's really down to being able to make good hiring decisions so that we've got the right resource available rather than using contractors and having less resource on the bench. So that's been really, really important. The confidence to actually have some analytics that back up your decision to make a hire rather than a hunch or twisting the CFO's arm behind his back. All those sort of things are really important. So that's, it's really helped us. We had an example actually where we had to resource 60 people onto a project fairly rapidly. And I think if we'd been back in the horrible spreadsheet world, we would have been in a world of pain trying to do that. So.
Right, and then particularly about analytics. Sorry, could we just go back a slide? So just drill into a bit more about analytics and how analytics has sort of benefited you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been really helpful in two ways. One is to actually get the insight in the business, but also really support continuous improvement. So there was things that we did when we did the original implementation that were kind of impacting the forecast, but weren't really visible when you kind of looked at it in kind of the non-analytics view. But actually, by using the snapshots that sit within Kantata Analytics, we could actually see some of the things that change. We could see how things like using fairly generic resources would actually impact the forecast dramatically, and therefore, we've been using it to change. But also, the ability to kind of give our leadership team some true visibility into the business and then allow them to slice and dice that and drill into it has been really positive. And in addition, we've kind of created some of our own Tableau dashboards. We're a Salesforce partner. We build Tableau for our customers. So kind of building on the data model that's provided through the analytics, we've been able to create some of our own more focused dashboards that kind of, I guess, drill into those nutty problems in our business that we're trying to solve. So quite a lot of work around forecast accuracy. So we've been doing quite a few things there. So it's been a really positive experience kind of using the analyzer and kind of, let's say, moving from spreadsheets and having to ask our CFO to get some numbers to be kind of self-serving has been really empowering.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that, obviously with Kantata, we have this real-time forward-looking forecast, and that is one of the principal reasons why, why companies come to us to implement Kantata, to use Kantata. But I think also you need that rear view mirror almost as well to see, how did our forecast actually turn out in reality? So not just having a look at having been able to see the forecast as it's coming to going into the future, but also understand, well, historically, how good has our forecasting been? Where have the problems been? As you said, where have things changed, so that we can improve the forecast even further. So, I'll say some more about this later on when we come to talk about some of the Kantata SX features. But I think that's really, that both the forward-looking and the rearward-looking, if you like, the historic analysis is really powerful. So, it sounds like you've made some really significant improvements. Can you just give us some numbers in terms of the impact that we've had on your business?
Yeah, so I think I said earlier that it's kind of really improved the forecasting effort fivefold. So we've kind of massively reduced that, and the profitability has obviously increased as well. So yeah, really, really positive outcome for us.
Good. Right. So 12 months down, what comes next?
Well, I guess some of it is more of the same. So we want to continue to use the analytics to drive into our forecasting and make it more accurate. And kind of, I guess, kind of smooth out some of the bumps that we have in terms of things that we're doing in Kantata. So back into the core product. So it's kind of an iterative cycle of kind of pushing things that we learn back into the configuration of the tool. We are sort of continuing to kind of dig more into the analytics and building some more of our dashboards, and we'll kind of continue to do that. I think, again, as a Salesforce partner, we're very interested to understand how machine learning and data cloud play into the Kantata space, and we can see some real benefits if we can get the data that's in Kantata into data cloud, and then use that to do some sort of machine learning and sort of, I guess, experiment a little bit with some of the out of the box stuff that's in Salesforce. But also we've got some very skilled data scientists. So now that we've got this kind of rich seam of data, a very nice data model, we want to point them at our data and then actually let them experiment with it and get them to find things that we didn't know in our data. So we're going to use them to do some supervised and unsupervised machine learning on the data, and really kind of start to bring that insight out. So again, we spend lots of time doing it for our clients and giving them really intelligent insight and predictions. We want to do the same for ourselves, really. So.
Yeah. And I think this is another area also that we're looking at as well. Obviously AI, machine learning is very much, top of mind of a lot of people. But I think with the professional services business, it's a messy business. It's not machines churning out widgets. It's about people. It's about, the politics. It's about just, the variations that you get within projects. So, we're definitely, now that we have this sort of platform of analytics and our data model and the ability to keep large amounts of data, and compare it over time, that's definitely something we're looking at, using AI to sort of start to identify patterns and trends that, aren't necessarily immediately obvious to us mere humans. And we'd really look forward to working with, people like yourselves, Dave, and other customers to look at, how we can bring things like Einstein Copilot, Data Cloud, Tableau sort of AI to the professional services area. So, I think just, watch this space. And for other customers, if you've got some insight, if you think this is something you'd like to contribute to, then please just get in touch and let us know. So really, Dave, as a final word from you, then, do you have any
Sorry, Mark, before you go on.
Yes.
We have a timely question which you may have just answered, but you might want to go through that list again just to get to this person's point, which was realistically, what kind of AI use cases do you think can be applied to Kantata data?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think that a lot of our focus is going to be on, again, trying to predict better in terms of not just the numbers, not just the forecast as we have it now, but also potentially predicting success. So trying to understand where we've done this before. Have we done a similar project in a similar industry, of a similar scale? How do we classify? How do we compare projects, and how do we then use that comparison, and potentially that could hopefully be over a large number of projects, to then say whether this next project that I'm planning or this bid that I'm doing, what's the likelihood of success, given where we've been before. I think that's a really interesting area, and as I said, it's trying to boil down what is potentially a messy human thing into numbers, which we can actually then use to do predictions. Alternatively, there's the bottom-up approach, which is literally just, we've got all of this detail, all of these tasks, all of these activities, all of these original estimates and baselines and things. Let's just see what happens in terms of being able to sort of figure out, regardless of industry, regardless of the nature of the project, it looks like when we have projects over a certain size or over a certain length of time, then we can learn some lessons from that, where things potentially don't go well, or where we potentially see issues. So there's kind of a top-down approach and potentially a bottom-up approach that we're looking at as well. Any other questions, or should we move on to
if we move on for now?
Dave. Yeah, okay, thanks, Prue. Yeah, so Dave, the lessons you've learned and any advice for others who you might follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of the things are kind of the interplay between analytics and the core Kantata products. So so we found just some of the ways that we were kind of allocating resources to projects, we kind of created some sort of generic categorizations. They seemed to be a good decision at the time. We didn't really think about it all the way through to the end. And some of those things caused us problems. So in terms of advice, maybe just think about the end state that you're looking for when you're kind of making some of those decisions, because we made some decisions which kind of seemed like good decisions, but if we'd kind of thought about them for 5 more minutes, we would have probably seen some holes in it. So that's one part. I think the other thing is actually, when you've got the analyzer product, the data model is quite interesting. It does expose a lot of things and kind of gives you some ways of thinking about it. So probably not for everybody, maybe if you're kind of not a CTO or you're not a tech data geek, then maybe not so interesting. But actually, as a tech data geek, just getting into the data model and having a delve around in there is quite insightful as well, in terms of things that you can think about in terms of maybe creating some simple reporting yourself that kind of is more aligned to sort of really more problem solving rather than dashboarding. I think the dashboarding that comes out of the box is amazing. It's just very, very helpful, but sometimes just having some of those scalpels to kind of dig into the business is quite interesting. So again, if you've got a bit of an understanding of data, have a look at the data model. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that's probably a nice place for another question that we have, which is someone who wants to know a bit more about snapshots. How are they valuable? How have you used them?
Do you want to talk about it, Mark, or shall I?
I think that was aimed at you, Dave.
Okay. Yeah, so basically a snapshot is going to give you a point in time view of the business. And when you have analytics, you're basically taking those snapshots through the life cycle of the business, so daily, weekly, monthly. And so you can actually use those to kind of look at variance between what's happened to the revenue, the margin, the resource allocation, all of those sorts of things. So it kind of gives you almost like a heartbeat of what's happening in the business. And kind of back to what I was saying about the data model. And thank you, Prue, for kind of lining the question up nicely for me. But it does really kind of tie into, if you can understand that data model and the snapshots, you can really get into the detail of what's in your forecast and what's changed and how to respond to it. So, some of the things I described around our head of ops, he can use the kind of the snapshots to really see, why something changed dramatically, what was the thing that generated the impact. So it's kind of very, very kind of useful in that respect. And we want more snapshots. So
You can't have too much data, I think, is what we're trying to say.
never have enough data.
Never have too much data. Right. That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Dave. It's really great. I know you've been on this journey just for the last 12 months or so, but to see where you're taking the technology it's really exciting to see. So just to bring this to life, really, for everyone on the call today, I'm just going to run through a few slides, and then hopefully we've got time for a quick demo or quick demo video at the end. So as we've said a few times, obviously, one of the key features of Kantata is our core forecasting engine. It's real time, so every time someone makes a change to a project, the forecast is being updated. It gives you that integrated data and the process of the forecasting, so that it's all in the one engine, it's all in the one box. It covers both resourcing and financial, so you see the financial impact of the resource choices that you're making, as Dave said, whether to stick with try and recruit permanent people, or whether to go out to the contract market. And it's a complete view from the very top numbers, a global view of your forecast, right the way down to individual resources and the time they're spending on each of their engagements, each of their assignments. If you can go to the next slide. That's pretty. And underpinning all of this is our integrated data architecture. So as I said, every time someone makes a change to a project, in fact, every time someone enters a timesheet, all that data, that change or that piece of information is instantly and automatically rolled up to give us operational information, and then to give us the kind of the tip of the pyramid, which is our analytics information. And this is where we drive the analytical dashboards from. And it's giving you that very, very simple to use, very easy to understand, but yet very powerful way to slice and dice your forecast, right, as I said, right the way down to individual resources. Next slide. So yes, we've been talking about the analytics today, embedded analytics, and in particular within our embedded analytics product, we have financial analyzer, which is looking at your profitability, so your revenue and your costs, giving you your profitability, and it really helps you to answer these kinds of questions. So, are you going to meet your targets? How is our forecast for this year playing out compared to last year's? And again, being able to see that at the global level, and then within a few clicks, be able to drill down to individual accounts, engagements, resources, etc. But what we've also added is forecast evolution, which is an enhancement, an addition to Financial Analyzer, and that enables you to answer this question of what happened with our forecast, compared to where we thought we'd be. So, why did we miss the forecast last month? Where did that revenue that we were expecting to earn, where did it go? And if, Prue, you want to click on the video link, you'll hear my voice again, but it won't be me speaking live. It will be a quick demo video of these two analyzers for you today.
Within Kantata SX's embedded analytics suite of dashboards, Financial Analyzer gives you an instant global view of your forecast in terms of revenue, cost, and margin across all the stages of your opportunity pipeline, from firm won deals to your early stage possible deals. You can see your exposure to working at risk and use Kantata's point-in-time exchange rates to analyze your forecast in the currency of your choice. You can see how you are forecast to meet your targets and drill into the detailed performance of any areas of concern. Interactive charts enable you to see both the value and timing of your forecast by account, engagement, and even resource in just a few clicks. You can also see how your forecast compares to the results for previous years. Financial Analyzer also includes Forecast Evolution, an interactive dashboard embedded within Kantata's business unit page, which shows how the forecast for that business unit has varied over time, using point-in-time snapshots of your forecast data. Here, you can also drill to resource level detail, and the variance chart identifies exactly where the changes to the forecast have occurred, giving you all the information you need to address any issues and improve the reliability of your forecast in future.
Right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks very much, everybody. That's me for today. Who you're on mute.
We do have some questions,
Okay.
but before we actually go into the questions, we've got a poll. So if we could get the poll up, and basically there are quite a few questions on here, and really we just need you to click on whichever of these statements applies to you or is true to you. Okay, so if the statement doesn't make any sense, like if you're not familiar with ERP, for example, then you wouldn't click it. But and this is really just to help us. Well, it does a number of things. So it informs what else we talk about going forward, what sort of training we put on, if any, and any next tasks and actions for people who find stuff that they're interested in. Okay. So there's a question, which, Dave, I'm not sure whether you can answer because it's specifically asking whether you've used Kantata in a certain way. So then maybe after Dave's answered, Mark could then also answer to say whether or not it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and another one. So do you use Kantata to compute forecast US GAAP, IFRS, revenue, or purely to forecast resource utilization?
So we aren't a US-based company, so we're not following GAAP reporting guidelines, but we are using it for revenue recognition and for a number of the kind of financial aspects. So what we do is we use Kantata to basically do all of the revenue recognition. So basically identifying all of the different models that we use to sell services to our customers, whether that's a fixed price contract, whether it's basically time and materials. So things like fixed price contracts, we do milestones and we recognize revenue against those milestones. And then we do all of the revenue adjustments within Kantata. So any additional costs that are related to the project, we capture. So we're obviously capturing any expenses that are related to the project, but we're also then capturing any third-party costs that we need to kind of put into the system. And we use that to then generate pro forma invoices that get passed to our accounting system. They've got a very simple setup now. We used to have a very complex ERP system that was doing lots of revenue recognition. It really just passes the invoices down to accounts receivable. It passes the expense items into accounts payable, as well as any third-party costs. And then fundamentally, we just kind of let the finance system do all the journal entries to kind of make it all true out. We do a few minor revenue adjustments. So we've got a little bit of license revenue that gets treated in a slightly different way. But I guess if the question was just about resource utilization, no, we're using it for more than resource utilization. We're using it for sort of revenue forecasting and understanding gross margin at a project level, and also, you know, all of the costs that wrap into that. Don't know if that answers the question. Maybe Mark, you got a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is I'm not an accountant, so you know, I think that the revenue recognition, or the revenue that we predict, that we forecast within the analyzers, is consistent with the revenue recognition that's happening within the Kantata application itself. We don't have any additional or different way of forecasting that revenue within the analytics itself. And I do believe that we do have revenue recognition models that do satisfy sort of US accounting, but I think the best thing to do is probably to say we'll get back to you with one of our accountants who could potentially give you that more detailed answer specifically about what would be needed in terms of revenue recognition models to satisfy those specific US regulations.
Okay, let's try this one. How many different revenue recognition methods do you have in your Kantata instance?
I don't know.
Is it only T&M with recognition as incurred and FP with recognition at discrete milestones?
So yeah, we use, I mean, I don't know all the different models. We've got some models, so we've got some license revenue where we basically invoice for the license up front, then we amortize it through the year. It's got its own specific revenue recognition model. We've got two variants of time and material. We've got a straight time and material, which is basically any time that we bill to the client is recognized. We've got capped time and material, which is basically we've got a cap on the amount of revenue that we can bill to the client, but actually it could be that we under or overburn on the resource utilization. If we underburn, then we give the money back to the client. But if we have to overburn, then we basically take the costs ourselves. And then fixed price is mainly done on milestones. I'm trying to think if we've got anything else. We have explored revenue share, but we've not done anything with revenue share.
Yeah, some of your government contracts can be a bit strange. Like, do you have clawback and things like that, or different tiers of revenue?
Yeah, actually, we don't get much. Yeah, not much in terms of clawback. So sometimes there are things like we do revenue adjustments where we might have offered to do something free of charge, but we want it to be accounted for within the overall project, because sometimes it's linked to resources being assigned, and assigned resources then need to go through security clearances and those sorts of things. We do some revenue adjustments, but not really changes the revenue model. We've had kind of open rate card type conversations, but I don't think we've ever done anything with that either. So yeah, probably relatively straightforward. Cap time materials, milestone based, fixed price, and then the license revenue, which is more about amortizing revenue over a 12-month period.
Does the forecasted revenue incorporate all of those intricacies, or is it somehow simplified?
A bit of both. I think it was dramatically simplified. So if I kind of play back 6 months, we would basically put in lots of generic resources assigned to the forecast. So we would kind of go in and go, it's a generic resource of a type 1 to 5, and then put it into the forecast. I think that's where we found that it really destroyed the forecasting, not destroyed, but impaired the forecasting within the system. So we've gone for much more granular forecasting, and also changes to the process. If you know that you're going to use Jane on a project, put Jane down on the project, don't put generic resource, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks before the project starts, Jane's name starts appearing, and then we discover lots of over allocations. So I think that was the area that we struggled a little bit with. So,
yeah, be as specific as you can, as early as you can, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question is for you, Mark. You mentioned forecast accuracy. Is that a different product to the embedded analyzers?
Yeah. So within Kantata SX, there is a part of the application called forecast accuracy, and that gives you a nice graphical view to see how far in advance your forecast was being predicted, and what the percentage of your forecast was that you were able to see. But what that isn't able to do is give you the level of detail to see where things have changed. So with forecast evolution, it's a kind of a complementary or a more detailed picture of where your forecast or how your forecast has changed over time. So they're complementary. They're different things, but they work together.
Okay, thank you. And that's all for the questions. Yep. So I'd like to thank both of our speakers today, especially Dave. That was really insightful. And the poll suggests that most people found that really useful and saw some similarities in your journey. To everyone else, thanks again for attending. As I said, this is just the first of a number of webinars of this format. The next two I've put in the chat, so please feel free to click on those and register if you haven't. The one next month, we're looking at period close, and we're going to have a talk about some best practice around period close that's really moving the dial for one of our customers, West Monroe. And then in June, we hear from a long-term customer. So today we've had a fairly new customer who's been with us for under a year. And June, we'll hear from Esri on basically how they're using Kantata to unlock scale. Thank you all, and thank you to our speakers.
Yes, thanks very much.